Hi, everyone. I'm Virgil, Texas. He, him. And this is, of course, Briahna Joy Gray.
Hi, everyone. This is a real pleasure.
As you may know, we host a lifestyle podcast called Bad Faith. And if you're not familiar with the show, it's totally improvised. There's no preparation whatsoever, no research. We don't read any articles. We just guess at what the news is. And then we talk about what we assume to be going on outside of our apartments. All the guests are people we've cold called, such as Noam Chomsky. You might have seen that. He was very confused to have these two people call him up and start arguing with him, but he was happy to do it anyway. So with that in mind, I think we should do this kind of like the show, kind of like how we do the show.
Virgil, of course, is giving himself much too little credit. I am the straight man of the two, although it is a real pleasure to be able to talk a little bit more freely than I was able to in the context of the campaigns podcast, Hear the Burn, which I saw some of you guys were mentioning in the chat, and I really appreciate that you listened to that and enjoyed that as well. On Hear the Burn, we couldn't directly go for the necks of various other primary candidates or really speak as freely as I think a lot of us were feeling at the time. And on Bad Faith, it's no holes barred, even though I sometimes try to bar Virgil.
Sometimes. You as a representative of the Bernie campaign, you had to hide your Bolshevism.
You had to say democratic socialism all the time to try to toe the line, as it were. But yeah, no such restrictions on Bad Faith Pod.
Yeah, he wasn't going to drop the democratic part until after he was elected, and he unfurls the communist flag of America. Let's see. Let's do this like the show. So the first 30 minutes is fluff that just about our day, and for some reason people enjoy it. So what's new with you?
I was thinking about, in preparation to come on here, when it was that I first joined the DSA and why it was. And I think a lot of that story is probably really relatable. Like a lot of folks, 2016 was a turning point for me. Bernie Sanders' candidacy was the first time I had seen a certain kind of politics that was unreserved, that really matched with my personal beliefs, that I didn't have to have all these caveats and workarounds to really commit to. And when it was unsuccessful, I found myself looking for some kind of political family. It was really demoralizing and frustrating to see the narratives that the media took away from 2016. I started writing as a consequence and ultimately ended up at The Intercept. And I started at The Intercept shortly before AOC's campaign really took off with that big ad she had in the spring. And I was kind of put on the AOC beat. And when she started talking about democratic socialism and how the membership was spiking around interest in her, I remember thinking, well, why the dickens am I not a part of this already? And I think that was probably when I became a card-carrying member. What about you, Virgil?
I thought this was the fluff part.
That was my fluff.
That wasn't fluff. No, that was the more substance. That's for the panel part.
You know how this goes. It's either fluff or deeply intimate questions that you squirm out of.
Okay, well then I'll do a fluff one. I think I'm gonna watch both of the Mamma Mia movies soon.
Why Mamma Mia and why now?
There are ads for them all the time on whatever network I watch cartoons on, and it's interesting. I've never seen either of the films. I've never seen the musical. Never even heard the musical.
With the ABBA repertoire?
Am I what?
Are you familiar with the ABBA?
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. That's why it's surprising that I've never seen the films.
Are you a big Meryl Streep fan?
I mean...
Pierce Brosnan?
That's like saying you're a big Coca-Cola fan.
Colin Firth?
He's good. He's a good actor. I mean, I don't know if they're giving it their all in the Mamma Mia film. Have you seen the Mamma Mia films?
I've seen at least one of them. The thing is, it's chock full of really, really top-rate stars that are known for their acting ability, but not so much their singing ability. In Pierce Brosnan, I will own being a basic human being who thinks that he's my favorite Bond. And I love him. I loved Remington Steele. I grew up in Kenya. I've told you, Virgil, and they used to show like TV that was 15 years old. So I used to watch a lot of Remington Steele, which was a detective show from like the 80s. But he is not a singer. That is not his strength.
Or do they sing in it, or is it dubbed?
They sing.
It's the actual actors singing.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of them are
that does not sound appealing.
It's not great. I mean, the daughter is very good. You know, the young woman from Mamma Mia and Mean Girls. I'm sorry, blocking her name. Anna, maybe something. Anna.
Oh, I know what you're talking. Amy. Wait, no, it's not Amy Adams.
No, normally we cut this part.
She was in. Yeah, cut this part. Cut this part. She was in Chloe. She was the woman in Chloe, right?
I know that I saw Chloe.
Okay, somebody ask in the Q&A, and maybe someone else will answer it, and we'll figure this one out later.
The one who told the temperature by, you know, her bosom and Mean Girls. Anyway, her voice is very good.
Okay,
but the others, including Meryl, sorry.
Yeah, her voice is good, but Meryl Streep.
Her voice is good, but it's most of the others aren't. Also, the older one of the friends is very good, but most of the cast are not strong singers. You're in it to really enjoy Meryl Streep doing what is clearly a vanity project and living her best life. And
whoa, that's not a vanity project. That's not a vanity project. That musical was huge. It's still running. If it weren't for the pandemic, it would still be running on Broadway. It's like one of the longest running ones that's still open.
Yeah, I don't want to be a snob about it, but I have mixed feelings about these. I love musicals. But the ones that are based on music that already exists,
yeah,
it's like you don't have to have any commitment. You just waltz in because you love the artist, and all of the score. The storylines are often very forced because they're written around the songs instead of the other way around. And I once dated a musical theater. A guy at a musical theater master's program who was an opera singer, and he once told me
Good luck getting a job.
Well, that's why we want a beautiful socialist future where everyone can pursue their best dreams without being purely driven by a need to find gainful insurance.
Yeah, we can fish in the morning and watch Mamma Mia in the afternoon and criticize in the evening.
No, but one thing he told me was that when the sign of the musical is that emotion should build and the story should build to a point where a moment is better expressed through song than through dialogue. And if the song isn't in service of the moment and doesn't elevate the moment beyond what dialogue can do, then there's no point and it's a bad musical.
Where did he get that who did he get that intuition from?
I don't know.
Because because it's not Sondheim, I'll tell you that much. But that's the real. That's the real. Amanda Seyfried, thank you. Yeah, wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, already, we're already answering questions here. That's why I never watched the films, because I figured the plot would be terrible, and by all accounts, the plot is terrible.
I mean, it's a paternity suit thing. It's not the worst. I don't know. Maybe I'll rewatch. These
three guys and one they're on this Greek island, and these three guys show up, and they could all be her father. Amanda Seyfried's father. I don't know how this paternity suit, you would put the ABBA songs, like shoehorn them into that plot. But
really, you can't figure out how Mamma Mia would come in.
Okay, fine, but that's just one song. Actually, this is an interesting thought experiment. Can you take the oeuvre of a band like ABBA and just fashion a musical of any plot with those songs?
We should do it. We should
do it. I would like some kind of dystopian agitprop that just uses the ABBA songs, and they just break out.
So Jesse in the chat says that Oklahoma is usually cited as the pivotal songs process the plot thing, and that's right. The guy, my very brief boyfriend there, used to sing the lead in Oklahoma. I want to point out that he was this kind of awkward black guy from Texas, and it's just to really paint the picture. But he was sweet.
Someone brought up the musical Chess in the chat. That's an excellent musical. That's one of my favorite musicals. And it was, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were going to.
I mean, I kind of did. I feel like I have to play the role that I do on the show sometimes. I feel like probably we should talk a little bit about politics or socialism.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's go to the panel part. I just want to note I've been watching the participant count. It has not been going down by very much. So by all accounts, this is all very popular stuff we're doing.
I'm willing to come back to it. I just think we should maybe at least weave in and out and like pretend like we're thinking about being on task at some point.
Yeah.
Also, watching the clock. How long do we have?
We're at about 11 minutes, so, we got a few minutes.
Okay, I feel good. There's Blade Runner discourse happening in the chat, so I'm gonna stop looking at it. I don't want
Okay,
to.
yeah, the chat's a little distracting. I'm not saying don't post in the chat, but that's just for you and me. We just can't get distracted by it, or else we'll just be watching this all night. Okay, let's go to the panel part. Let's interview each other in the way that we might interview Ice Cube.
Well, Virgil, I want to know, when you first started to identify as socialist, were you one of these red diaper babies, or did you come to it later in life?
I was not a red diaper. I came to it later in life. Yeah.
What provoked it?
Honestly, I think in my political development, a big thing was just my disenchantment with the Obama administration and the financial crisis, the recession that began in 2008. Which I was there. I spent most of the last decade broke as hell. And I follow politics, not professionally, as a consummate amateur. And I would see things like the ACA debate. And I remember thinking, hey, I don't have health insurance. This might end up as something that would really help me. And then it passed, and then I got the thing, and I went on the website, I got the thing, and it was horrible. It was awful insurance. I was paying a substantial amount of my income for a plan that was terrible.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, this was what all this trouble was for? Just essentially, just a big payoff for the health insurance companies. And that's when I realized, oh, okay, we are just so far away from an equitable social welfare state that both of the major parties do not in the slightest represent what were my core principles.
Yeah.
And so I was very, aggrieved, I guess you'd say. I was miffed by that whole situation. And I think that's about the time I started identifying as a socialist. But I was also not, at the time, I was not that taken by things like Occupy.
Why not?
It didn't seem effective to me. I mean, I went down to Occupy and I met the people and I knew people involved in it. And I appreciated what it started as this discourse against austerity that we just did not have in the United States, and the Democrats were not going to do in the United States. The liberals were not going to do in the United States, not while Obama was president. But as an organized or effective political movement, I found it lacking.
Well, what do you think that was about? Because I remember the discourse was all about, oh, they don't have a message. But I think that was overstated the same way that people said that Black Lives Matter doesn't have a message. And I think that's overstated, right? There is
absolutely
a charter. There are specific demands. Whether or not the media decides to elevate them or whether they could be more concentrated and pitched in a different way is a separate story. I mean, it's when you have these leaderless movements, this is kind of like par for the course. But it seemed to me that Occupy was making some very specific criticisms about how Obama was handling the recession or had handled it. And the discourse around them not having more concentrated message seemed like an excuse for purportedly liberal pundits to be dismissive of a movement that directly implicated them in their kind of class position. And I say this as someone who had just graduated from law school and was kind of literally walking on Wall Street to my first firm job and feeling very conflicted about it.
That's more of a comment than a question.
It's true. It's my law school coming out. I mean, so what do you think was missing? What did you observe as the vulnerability of Occupy? Why weren't you ensorcelled by it?
I mean, you can look at how Occupy turned out and kind of see the answer to that question. I also, I think there was, it was a protean movement against austerity, right? I'm not trying to crap on Occupy or anything like that.
Crap on Occupy.
Yeah, I know you're trying to get me to start a feud with Occupy, and I definitely don't want to tango with those folks. No, because I respect a lot of what they did and what it has led to. Specifically, I think the Bernie Sanders campaign would not have happened had it not been for Occupy. And that was another thing that was a huge step in my political evolution, because I saw the Bernie Sanders campaign, and I saw in this 2015, 2016, and I saw this strange man who is has some of my affectations that I can relate to, who was saying things on television, national television, at Democratic debates that I never saw anywhere else. I've never heard that in corporate media. I never saw a political campaign say these things. I never saw a political ad about these things. I never heard anyone say, hey, you know, we've got people sleeping on the street and we have 50 freaking brands. You don't need 50 freaking brands of toothpaste in the toothpaste aisle.
Yeah, it was a no-brainer.
Someone who says, you know, I'm proud Henry Kissinger is not my friend. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. So I can't, if I can be honest, like I can't say that I really had a very cogent understanding of who Bernie Sanders was before, 2015, but my mother did. And she, has always been progressive, was the word that we used to use before it got kind of co-opted. And, she always felt like she had very terrible electoral options her entire life and voted third party her entire adulthood until Obama was the first Democratic president that she ever voted for. And I remember, I've told this story before, but she called me from a Bernie rally. I was at work on a weekend and she had dragged my brother down to a Bernie rally downtown. And I was like, what the heck are you guys doing? Where are you? In this crowd of people, she had her arm thrown around some random stranger, which also seems like a weird thing to do in these COVID times. But she's like, I'm here for Bernie. I'm like, who? Bernie. And so I remember watching the first debate, all right, let's see what this Bernie business is all about. And being blown away, and then being so frustrated that everybody didn't see what I see, going to work the next day with all of my liberal New York coworkers at the law firm and having these arguments in which they were talking about Bernie Sanders like he was the second coming of Satan, not even a Democrat. And by the end of that campaign season, it just became really clear to me that to the extent I ever identified as a capital D Democrat or felt any kind of simpatico or ethical allegiance to this party, it just, those bonds were pretty solidly broken by the way I was treated during that cycle. Especially, I gotta say, as a Black woman, the idea that a Black woman who liked Bernie existed felt like anathema to the entire media infrastructure.
Bree, we're getting the light, so I think we got to be fast paced on the next few answers.
Are we done? Should we just go to the?
Well, let's just answer the question very quickly. So, when did you join the DSA exactly?
I think it was probably spring of 2018, something like that.
Okay, I win. I joined in November of 2016.
Does this number at the bottom of the card mean something?
I couldn't see. It was lit. You shouldn't. Don't give out your number. They'll steal your identity. And they will steal your identity, and then they'll use it to buy revisionist thought. Okay, and this final question: why should the participants, people watching this, join the DSA?
I mean, I did it because I was looking for a sense of community, and I think also, given the kind of questions that we get on the podcast, Virgil, I think a lot of folks are looking for some sense of what to do next. For a long time now, for the last 8 years, Bernie represented a kind of figurehead for a way of thinking in a movement. Whether or not he wanted that mantle, it just was kind of de facto how it was. And now folks really feel like the situation is even more exigent than it has ever been, and they don't quite know what the next step is. And I don't know how we're going to move in tandem in an organized way, the way we need to do, to actually affect change if we don't have some kind of umbrella under which to organize ourselves. And there's many umbrellas that could exist, and I think the DSA is as good a one as any.
My answer to that question would be I don't have a pat answer for it. I just think look around you. Think about how you felt in this past year. Look at how the most, purportedly the most advanced society in human history is being brought to its knees by a pandemic. Look how a civilization that is governed by private profit and not the idea of collective action, of not the idea of communitarianism, is foundering before your very eyes. And that's even before you get to climate change. I think if you want to have a modicum of hope that a better world is possible, and I'm the more pessimistic of the two of us sometimes.
What?
I think, okay, all the time, yeah. Then I think that the only thing you can really do is organize with others and fight for a better world. So I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to go over time here and throw it back to you, Kara.
I have a question that I'm going to ask for Bree and Virgil. It's pretty big, but what would you like to see DSA actually be doing if it was up to you guys?
I will say that after Bernie dropped out, I was really eager to see how the void was going to get filled. And I was apprehensive to say too much too early, especially around the Black Lives Matter movement, because I felt like it wasn't my place. I'm not an organizer or an activist. I'm even relatively new to politics, and was very hesitant to start articulating what I thought could potentially exert leverage and create political potential for the left. But as the months went by and I slowly began to have conversations with people who were able to indicate what had and hadn't been tried, I gained more confidence in saying things like, oh, well, maybe we should start to organize campaigns around withholding our vote. And maybe that's something we could do in these discrete swing states, even if we couldn't do it on a national level. And maybe, we should talk to Sunrise or whomever about what guarantees they have before they lend their endorsements to Joe Biden, who is not going to have anything to hold him accountable. I mean, he's going to have much less to hold him accountable once he already secures our votes. And so I know that I was looking for someone to kind of provide some leadership and guidance about what was possible from an organizational perspective. And I think that that's something that I think I would like perhaps benefit from the DSA.
Something that I like about the DSA is that it is a diverse organization that employs a variety of tactics. Obviously, electoral tactics have been very, very successful in many places, such as Chicago and New York, and they're only getting better. And that's this knowledge is on how to engage in electoralism is accruing, and you're starting to see a kind of a snowballing effect in terms of electing socialists on a nationwide scale. I appreciated how the DSA rallied behind Bernie Sanders, like many of my non-DSA, multi-tendency lefty friends did as well, because they recognize that was a real fight. I also admire that there are people in the DSA who engage in street protests, who engage in Black Lives Matter protests, who engage in housing actions, who will show up at a Trump Nazi's house to scream at them and be condemned by liberals for doing it. So I would say, obviously it's a democratic organization. I would not want to impose my will on it, but I think right now something that I guess I would like to see, and maybe this is more of a horizon goal, is the DSA to emerge as a proto-party organization, if not a third party in full at some point. And I think there's a lot of, I mean, I'm very reserved about it. I think there's a lot of things that need to happen to get to that point where we can actually have a real socialist alternative in the United States on the ballot, one that can win elections. But I think that the Biden administration, I mean, just by, looking at how this has been going just in the past week, I think that that's going to be very much so an accelerant for that process. And it's a question of whether the DSA, we hit 100,000 members, and the snowballing continues, and it continues to be it continues to grow and to be a major player, and it continues to promote the ideological view, the roadmap that was discussed earlier in the presentation, as a viable alternative to the Democrats, when frankly it seems like half the people who voted for Joe Biden are already done with the Democrats.